Welcome back, students. Today we are going to discuss Unit 6, and in this particular unit, we are going to discuss gas exchange and transport topic. Okay. So before we start the main content, I would like to inform that the images used in our slides are for education purpose only. We respect intellectual property right of the original creator and owner of these images. If you are the owner of any of the images used in this PPT, have any concern, any issue, please contact us at sathee@iitk.ac.in and we shall remove the images. In this particular video lecture, we are going to discuss these points: pulmonary gas exchange and organ involved, transportation of gas in blood, gas exchange in aqueous media. So, first of all, organism, we all know this, that organism use this oxygen, O2. Why? What is the need to use this particular gas, oxygen? Just to break down the nutrients. What kind of nutrients? Like glucose. And why there is a need for the breakdown of this glucose? To generate energy for organism own metabolic activity, right? That's why normally organism use oxygen to break down the nutrients like glucose and to generate energy for its various metabolic activities. And in this process to generate energy, production of another gas also involved, which is known as carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is very much harmful. Okay, so we need to exhale it. Any kind of organism need to exhale it, and for continuous as each type of cell which is present inside an organism require continuous supply of energy for its metabolic activity, and that's why continuous supply of oxygen is also very much essential. Okay, there is a continuous need to supply oxygen. Why? Because we are in a need for energy for our various metabolic activity. Okay, so continuous supply of oxygen is essential, and that's why continuously carbon dioxide also released. Okay, so the exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere with carbon dioxide production by the cell, this whole process is known as breathing. Okay, what is breathing? Exchange of oxygen from the atmosphere with carbon dioxide produced by the cell is known as breathing. This exchange of gas. Okay, now the question arises, how we breathe involve understanding the complex process of respiration at cellular level. Okay, and the physical act also of inhalation and exhalation. Okay, inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. Okay, so respiration is a continuous process with which one can utilize oxygen for its own metabolic activities for to generate energy, okay, at cellular level, and in this process continuous intake of oxygen and exhale of carbon dioxide occur. Clear? Now this respiratory mechanism is different. Organism to organism it can vary. Different type, organism to organism, the organelles, organ type is different. Okay, so respiratory mechanism in animals are adapted according to their environment and the level of complexity of that particular type of animal. Okay, in some organisms which are comes under simple organism category, simple diffusion is the method which is used up by some simple organism like a sponge, like coelentrates, like flatworms, for the exchange of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, and this is through direct their body surface. Lower invertebrates directly utilize their body surface for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide through simple diffusion method. Okay. Some organism like earthworm, they actually utilize their skin, moist skin, for this breathing purpose. Okay. So moist cuticle is used up by the earthworm for its breathing purpose, which allow gas exchange in earthworm. Some insects use tracheal tubes. Tracheal tubes. Okay. And these tracheal tubes are a type of complex network of tubes which is used up by the insect for the transportation of air to their body cells. Okay. And in some amphibians like frog, toad, they utilize skin for their respiration purpose. Okay. They can also use moist skin, while some other organism like from simple to complexity, we just continuously discussing from simple to complex organism. Okay. So here for fishes, they utilize gills for their breathing purpose. Okay. And these aquatic animals have specialized vascularized structure which are known as gills. Okay. In advance, now from fish to now comes to the reptiles and mammals category, birds also, they use some advanced system. Okay. And mainly in mammals, they have highly developed respiratory system for efficient breathing purpose. Lungs are present in terrestrial animals, reptiles and birds, all three categories. Okay. In reptiles, birds and mammals, they use lungs, vascularized lungs sac for gas exchange purpose. Okay. Now let's discuss human respiratory system in detail. So the human respiratory system is a complex network of organ and tissue which is responsible for the exchange of gases between body and the environment. Okay. So this is the general structure of lung. We have two lungs, left and the right one. This one is the right one and this one is the left one. Okay. Right and left. So let's discuss upper respiratory system. Upper respiratory system consists of nostrils. First of all, this is the outer structure which is present just above our lips. Okay. Lead to the nasal chamber via nasal passage. Okay. So this is the nostrils. This is the nasal chamber. Okay. And this chamber is further open up into the tube-like structure which is known as nasopharynx. This is the nasopharynx. Okay. So this chamber open into the nasopharynx, which is a sharp passage for both the things, food and air. Okay. And this nasopharynx further lead to the trachea via, this is known as trachea. This area is known as trachea and this is the nasopharynx. Okay. So this lead to the open into the trachea via glottis, and this is glottis and epiglottis. There is a flap like structure which is known as epiglottis, which actually cover the glottis during swallowing the food, so that food cannot come to the windpipe. Okay. So this flap is known as epiglottis, which actually cover the glottis, this glottis, during swallowing to prevent the food entry. Okay. So what is the outsider structure? First structure is known as nostrils. Okay, this nostrils then open up into a nasal chamber. Okay, and then nasal chamber to the nasopharynx. This nasopharynx further open into the trachea through glottis. And on just above the glottis there is a flap like structure which is known as epiglottis, which actually cover the glottis during swallowing the food type, okay, to prevent food entry into it. Now this is the trachea. Okay, this trachea is a straight tube like structure. You can see over here it is a straight tube like structure which further split into the two different part, right and the left part. Okay, so trachea is a straight tube split into the right and left. Primary bronchi. Now when it divide itself into two part, then right now we are using the term primary bronchi, left and right. Okay, in the mid thoracic cavity. Further, this is the primary left primary bronchi and that one right primary bronchi. Okay, further this each bronchi actually divide repeatedly to form secondary and tertiary bronchi. Okay, so this one is the primary and this is the secondary one. This is the secondary one. And when there is another division in the secondary, that time we can use the term tertiary. So each bronchi first of all divided into primary, then secondary, then tertiary structure, and finally in the bronchioles. Okay, this bronchioles ending in thin terminal bronchioles. These are the bronchioles. These structure are known as bronchioles. Okay, certain kind of cilia, mucus glands, and incomplete cartilaginous rings are present actually in the initial part. Means these are present in the conducting zone except terminal bronchi. Means cilia, mucus gland and other things are not present over here. Remaining part in the trachea, primary, secondary, tertiary part, cilia is present, mucus glands are there, and some little bit of cartilaginous rings are also present. Mainly cartilaginous ring present in the trachea and primary till primary part. But on an average, these things are present in whole structure excepting the terminal part, excepting the terminal bronchi. Okay, so and in this terminal bronchi, each terminal bronchi lead to a thin, irregular shaped or irregular walled structure, which is a vascularized structure. This is the zoom picture of this terminal bronchi. This time we can use the term alveoli for the same. Alveoli for the same. This is the alveoli structure. And this is the alveoli duct. This is alveoli or alveolus. And these sacs are known as alveolar sac. These are 300 present in the approximately 300 million. Okay, so in each terminal bronchi lead to a thin irregular shaped structure which is known as alveoli. So first of all, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and then terminal bronchi or bronchioles. Further, these bronchioles are converted into the irregular shaped structure known as alveoli. Okay, so the whole network of bronchi and bronchioles and this alveoli, this whole network are actually involved in the making up of lungs. So these are the part of lung. The whole network of bronchi, bronchiole and alveoli comes under this lungs category. These all three structure actually involve to make up the lungs. Okay, and as we already discussed, this cilia, muscular glands and incomplete cartilaginous rings are absent in this exchange zone. Exchange zones means where oxygen and carbon dioxide get exchanged, means at this particular zone. These things are not present over here. Okay. Now, this is the general structure of lung. Okay, this is the lung structure. And if we zoom this particular region, then we can very clearly say that in our two lungs there is a double layered membrane is there, which is known as pleura. Pleura is the outer layer of lungs. Okay, and this pleura actually reduce friction. Why? What is the necessity of this particular double layer? This actually provide reduce friction to the lung surface, and this outer pleural membrane contact the thoracic lining, while outer membrane contact with the thoracic lining, while inner pleural membrane contact with the lung surface. So this outer one contact with the thoracic line, while the inner one contact with the lung surface. Okay, so lung have double layered outer covering, outer pleural membrane and inner pleural membrane. Clear? Now let's discuss the conducting part. So the conducting part of the lungs means from the external nostrils to the terminal bronchioles. Okay, the transportation of atmospheric air to the alveoli, clear it of foreign particle, humidify it and bring it to the body temperature. From external nostrils to the terminal bronchioles. Okay, as there is already we have discussed mucus layer is there, cilias are there, and certain cartilaginous rings are present except the terminal point. So all those things actually clear the foreign particles. Okay, and humidified the air and bring it to the body temperature. And the exchange part means alveoli and their ducts facilitate further the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and the atmospheric air. Clear? Now, as you know, where are our lungs situated? Our lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is anatomically air-tight structure. Okay, our lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which are anatomically airtight structure here. Okay, and this thoracic chamber is dorsally formed by the vertebral column, as you can see over here. This is the vertebral column. This thoracic chamber is dorsally formed by the vertebral chamber and ventrally by the sternum. This is the sternum structure. Okay, ventrally by the sternum and laterally by the, what is this? These are the ribs. Laterally by the ribs and a dome shaped structure which is known as diaphragm. And this diaphragm is present at the lower side. Okay, so thoracic chamber dorsally formed by the vertical column, ventrally by the sternum, okay, laterally by the ribs, and at the lower side there is a dome shaped structure which is known as diaphragm. Okay, so this anatomical setup ensure that any change in the volume of the thoracic cavity is reflected into the lungs. Or we can say lung cavity, which is essential for the breathing purpose. Okay. So there is another structure, this yellow structure. This is known as cardiac notch. And this cardiac cardiac notch is present to make room for the apex of the heart. This, as you can say, this is the left lung and this is the right lung. There is a space in between. And this is known as cardiac notch. This is present to make the apex of the heart because heart is little bit tilted towards the left side. And the apex will extend into this particular notch. Okay, so that's why there is a little space is present and this is known as cardiac notch. Now, let's discuss the steps which are present in the respiration. First step is breathing. Breathing is also known as pulmonary ventilation. Okay, this breathing drawn in atmospheric air and release carbon dioxide rich alveolar air. Okay, so and after breathing, diffusion of these gases means oxygen and carbon dioxide occur across the alveolar membrane. So first step is breathing, and then second step diffusion of these gases across the alveolar membrane, and third step transportation of these gases by the blood. Okay, and then diffusion of further oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and the tissue. Through blood it transported towards the various tissue level, and then again diffusion of this carbon dioxide and oxygen occur between blood and the tissue level. Okay, now at fifth point, utilization of this oxygen which is inhaled by us. Why we inhale this oxygen? Because oxygen is required for the generation of ATP. Okay, so for that reason, utilization of this oxygen occur by the cell for its all catabolic activity, and during this process release of carbon dioxide occur. So these are the steps involved in respiration. First is breathing, drawn total atmospheric air and release of carbon dioxide, diffusion of air across the alveolar membrane, then transportation of these gases by the blood, and then diffusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen between tissue and blood, and then utilization of this oxygen by the cell for its catabolic activity and release of carbon dioxide. Okay, now let's discuss the mechanism of breathing. This breathing involved two steps. First one is inspiration and second expiration. Inspiration and expiration. The first one, inspiration. When intrapulmonary pressure, mean pressure inside the lung, pressure present inside the lung is less than the atmospheric pressure. Pressure inside the lung is less than the atmospheric pressure. That time this diaphragm, which is a muscular structure, this diaphragm contract. Normally it is present like this. When it contract means it moves towards the downside. Okay, so this diaphragm contract. Now it looks like this. Okay, so when it contract, that time it will increase the thoracic chamber volume. Obviously, it is when it contract, it will increase the thoracic chamber volume, and the external intercostal muscle lift ribs up and sternum increase thoracic volume. Right, and that time the pulmonary volume increase, and it will create negative pressure inside the lung. And that's why, because of the presence of negative pressure, air move from outside environment into the lung. Okay, so what happened initially when our intrapulmonary pressure is less than the atmospheric pressure, that time our diaphragm contraction occur. Contraction, because of the contraction, it will increase thoracic chamber volume. Our external rib and external muscle lift our ribs and sternum, which again increase the thoracic volume, and that time pulmonary volume increase, which create negative pressure inside our lung, and because of the negative pressure, air move from outside to the inside of our body. Okay. And what happened during expiration? Just reverse the process which just now we have discussed. In expiration, the alveolar air is released out. Okay, is released out. Alveolar air means carbon dioxide. When it occur when intrapulmonary pressure is higher than atmospheric pressure. And this time diaphragm relaxed. Diaphragm is in its relaxed position. Diaphragm and intercostal muscle in its relaxed position. In its relaxed position means thoracic volume decrease. When thoracic volume decrease, it will reduce pulmonary volume. Okay, and at this time, intrapulmonary pressure slightly exceed than atmospheric pressure, so air is expelled from the lung. Expelled from the lung during expiration. Okay, just reverse all the steps are just reverse as we have discussed just now for inspiration. Okay, now so this occur inhalation and exhalation process. Now some additional points are also need to discuss over here, like abdominal muscle. These muscles actually help to increase inspiration and expiration strength. Okay, in a healthy human being, what is the breathing rate? 12 to 16 times per minute. And there is an instrument known as a spirometer. It actually estimates air volume involved in breathing for clinical assessment. Okay, what is the name of this particular instrument? A spirometer. Now let's discuss certain kind of volume and capacity, respiration volume and capacity of an individual. First term is tidal volume or TV. Tidal volume is a air volume or volume of air which is normally an individual use for inspiration or expiration purpose during a normal breathing process or during normal respiration. Normally, the amount or volume of air anyone can use for the inhalation or exhalation purpose. That normal breathing is known as the volume of air which we use to inhale and exhale in a normal breathing process, that is known as tidal volume. And what is the amount of that air? This is about 500 ml. A healthy person can inspire or expire around 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. Per minute. 6,000 to 8,000 per minute means 60 seconds. Okay, so this is normal volume of air used by an individual per inspiration or expiration during a normal respiration is known as tidal volume. Another term is inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume, IRV. It is an additional volume of air a person can inspire by forcibly inspiration. If someone forcibly inspire more air. So what is the capacity of that individual? Forcibly, how much amount, how much volume one can inspire? That is known as inspiratory reserve volume. So this is normally in tidal volume. What is the normal amount? 500. But if forcefully someone use inspiration, that time one can use 2500 ml to 3000 ml of air forcefully. Okay. Similarly, expiration, if someone forcibly expire or exhale how much amount of carbon dioxide forcibly. So this is about 1000 to 1100 ml. So this is known as ERV or expiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume is more than expiratory reserve volume. This is 2500 to 3000 ml, while expiratory 1000 to 1100. Now residual volume, ER. Residual volume is the volume of air which remaining present in the air even after forcibly expiration. This is present in the air, in the lungs always. That is residual volume of air, and this is about 1100 to 1200 ml. Okay. So by combining these volume which just now we have discussed, we can drive various pulmonary capacities. First is inspirating capacity, IC, means total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration is known as inspirating capacity. So total volume of air means tidal volume, which is 500, plus inspiratory reserve volume. So this is the total. Tidal 500, inspiratory reserve 2500 or 3000. This is known as inspiratory capacity. Second is expiratory capacity, total volume of air one can expire after normal inspiration, means tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume. So TV plus ERV is equal to EC. Clear? Now functional residual capacity, FRC, means volume of air that remains in the lung after normal expiration. Volume of the air that remains in the lung after normal expiration. So that is known as functional residual capacity, means expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume. Residual volume are normally present inside our lungs plus expiratory reserve volume. This is known as functional residual capacity. What is vital capacity of our lung? Vital capacity means maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forcefully expiration, means vital capacity is equal to ERV plus TV plus IRV. Tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. This is known as vital capacity. So what is our total lung capacity? Total volume of air accumulated in our lung at the end of forced inspiration. This is known as total lung capacity, means reserve volume plus ERV plus TV plus IRV. This is known as total lung capacity, or we can say vital capacity plus residual volume is known as total lung capacity. Okay, so this one is present always in our lungs, residual volume, which is about 1000 to 1100. Okay, this is the tidal volume, yellow one, that is 500, and expiratory reserve volume, this. Okay, so, and this is the functional residual capacity, which contains your residual volume plus expiratory reserve volume. Remaining means tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. This comes under inspiratory capacity. And except the residual volume, all these things, IRV, TV and ERV comes under vital capacity. Right? And total lung capacity, similar, tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. So these are certain terms which is related to respiratory capacity of the lungs of an individual. So this is all about the today's video lecture related to respiration and breathing chapter. I hope most of the things has been cleared now. Still you have any question related to today's video lecture, please let me know. We will discuss it later on. Till then, take care, bye bye, and keep learning. Namaskar.